I still like book 2 better. But that's probably just a matter of personal taste. I mean, once you can get past all of the terrible decisions made in this book. On that note, it sounds like it's time for the teardown, where I Reagan the shit out of this book's Berlin Wall. That was a dated reference that probably doesn't even really make that much sense. I apologize. Here we go! Once again, I really have no earthly idea why this book is called The Encounter. Certainly, there are any number of things in it that could be described as encounters. Tobias encounters that ladyhawk out over the mountains. The Animorphs encounter the Yeerks in the woods. That rat encounters Tobias' stomach, but it's just such a broad title. It doesn't really do anything to capture what makes this book unique amidst the rest of the series. We also seem to have another lack of communication between the author and the cover illustrator. Tobias says he's blonde. Or at least was blonde. But I guess nobody told David B. Mattingly. For the record, I don't know that guy. Early on, it's mentioned that it's been a few weeks since Tobias was trapped as a hawk. The visitor said a little bit over a week, so it's safe to assume it's probably been about 3 to 5 weeks since the first book. Not really important, but it's nice to have a little sense of the timeline. Do I really need to say how insanely reckless that scene at the dealership is? I mean, sure, maybe it's a noble cause, but you are literally responsible for saving the entire world here. Plus, where is Rachel supposed to hide so she can morph back in private? Doing this literally puts every member of your team at risk. God damn! Kids are dumb. Speaking of, when Rachel morphs back, the book describes her tusks as dividing into teeth. African elephants have 24 teeth, humans have 32. I get that, but it just seems weird to me. I would personally have had the teeth just grow back through the jaw. Whatever. Can I just take a moment to acknowledge how sad it is that Tobias has been missing for weeks and nobody seems to have gone looking for him? Not the relative that he's living with, not even the school seems to have noticed that he's gone. I mean, supposedly Jake left a note with his uncle saying he'd moved back with his aunt, but really? There's no follow-up? It's just depressing. Apparently, Cassie's family farm borders a national forest. That should definitely help in narrowing down where exactly these books take place. Tobias describes it as being thousands of square acres in size. Thousands of square acres. When Cassie morphs into a wolf, Tobias describes her knees as changing direction. Speaking of the whole wolfing thing, if they were really that concerned about the morph clock, why didn't they just take a break? I mean, they were traveling for miles. Why not just stop at a safe distance, demorph, remorph, and then resume? It's not like they didn't have Tobias there to keep an eye out. Aha! Later, Tobias says that he hasn't even been a hawk for a month. That means that the entire series up to this point has taken place in less than 30 days. Interesting. Hey, Marco wants to go home and play Doom. That's an actual real video game from the 90s. Good on you, K.A.s. Good on you. During that scene in the mall, I know there was a lot going on, so maybe nobody noticed, but wouldn't a casual passerby think it was a little bit odd that Rachel's arguing with a bird? And who's going to pay for that window that Marco smashed? His unemployed, clinically depressed father? I mean, I appreciate the camaraderie, but seriously, how do they get away with stuff like this? Okay, so they're in the mountains, attempting to catch fish. With fishing rods. Which, again, there is no mention of them bringing with them. A decent enough plan, I guess, but as time wears on, people start to get antsy. How did it not occur to anybody to, I don't know, morph into one of their bird of prey morphs that catch fish? Between the 5 of them, they have 4 bird of prey morphs known to catch and eat fish, 3 of which live mostly off of fish. I mean, wouldn't that be more exciting than sitting around with sticks and lines? Not just for the characters, but for the readers. I mean, it's just a thought. As always, it was so frustrating to see just how poorly thought out their plan was. I mean, they have no idea what's on board that ship, other than, presumably, a huge tank of water. So what was their plan once they got on board? I mean, what can they do as fish? Was the plan to demorph? If so, how did they know that they were going to be able to do so without exposing themselves as humans? I know their end game was to frag the ship's cloaking device, but even if they figure out how to do that, what was their plan for escape? I mean, for all they knew, they could be in orbit when the time came. Plus, how did they know that the suction wasn't generated by some sort of whirling propeller or any number of other things that could have pureed them before they got on board the ship? It's so poorly thought out. Honestly, I was genuinely shocked when they had the wisdom to send Jacob first by himself, so that at least if something went wrong, only he would die. God damn. I mean, I know they're kids. They don't think things through. And plus, they've only been at this for a month. So it doesn't necessarily seem inorganic to the storytelling, but if things like these keep happening for too long, it will start to seem inorganic if there are never any lasting consequences. It's not like a sitcom where everything should be back to normal at the beginning of the next book. I also acknowledge the whole everything's going wrong but they miraculously make it out at the last second thing can be more exciting, and every once in a while it's fine. But even with a good plan, there are plenty of opportunities for things to go wrong. All I'm asking for is a simple acknowledgement that they've at least considered the possibilities. I know long planning scenes can be kind of boring, but this is a book. You can do time-lapse. See? It's not hard. You can summarize a plan to the reader once it's already in motion. That's one of the benefits of having a designated narrator. I mean, this is just an idea that I'm pulling out the top of my head, but it could help to mix things up and keep them from getting too formulaic. Of course, we're only on book 3, so maybe future books will change things up. Now, things are going to get a little bit technical, but I encourage you to bear with me. When the Animorphs do manage to escape the truck ship, Tobias says they're about 700 feet up. He also mentions that when they start falling, they're fully human. Now, I'm no physicist, but even just the quick use of a couple of simple online tools, that's the Splat Calculator and Kaysan's Freefall with Air Resistance Calculator, links below, puts their time to the ground at around 7 seconds. Now, admittedly, these calculators don't seem to factor in terminal velocity, but even if that quadrupled their time in the air, it is said many, many times that morphing takes a couple of minutes. Sure, they were getting smaller, which would, of course, increase terminal velocity, and sprouting feathers, which would obviously decrease it again, but that still seems like a huge stretch to me. I mean, the only really logical explanation is that Tobias doesn't really have a solid sense of how far exactly 700 feet is, or more likely, the author. And lastly, as they're plummeting, Tobias says that Marco is morphing into a bald eagle. Now, I suppose it's possible that Marco acquired a bald eagle off camera at some point, but seeing as how after this book, and hell, even earlier in this book, he's right back to morphing a Seahawk, methinks Miss Applegate probably just neglected to check her notes on this one. And I think that's it for the encounter. Was Tobias a fan favorite for anybody else out there? Can anyone explain to me why this book is called The Encounter? Hell, does anybody want to school me in physics? Because I am game. Just let me know in the comments. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe, tell your friends, and tune in next time for my exciting review of book number 4, The Message. I'll see you then.